I said to myself one day, you know what? I really want to be more successful off the field than I was on the field. So I better start now, because what I plan to do on the football field is it's going to take me years to exceed this in the business world.
Leader of the lions, pick of the litter. Against the strongest, I'm alive and remain a victor. My battle scars that show that I am far from a quitter. Went through it all enough to strive, and that makes me a winner. When it's me versus the globe, with my back to the wall, when at my lowest of lows, still I put up a brawl. Was never in me to fold, never in me to fall. So when my story is told, they'll say I gave it my all.
Welcome to the Next Chapter podcast. We are back, and we have a very special guest today. JT, I'm going to kick it off to you to do the introduction. I only think it's right, since you guys probably went against each other at some point and had some helmet smashings. Is that correct?
Well, appreciate it as always. Excited to be here on the Next Chapter podcast, as always. Great to have Ndamukong Suh, somebody I've known for a long time, actually. Back even before I was playing football. So, but to your point, there are a couple times when I got to interact with a nose tackle. It shouldn't happen. The play was, it was called an error. Or maybe the defensive coordinator called some type of stunt, and you see Sue, somebody spiking around, and you're like, oh shit. You look at the quarterback, you tell him like you got about 0.7 seconds to get that ball out of your hands. But no, man, we appreciate you coming on. Excited to just talk about your experience, and talk about what what it means to be a part of this community called PAC, and really thankful for having you.
I mean, excited to be here.
You damn
Appreciate
right.
you both. I mean, it's been a long time since we've got to sit down like this and chop it up. So I'm excited to be here. And man, PAC is amazing. It's something that is very special to me. I feel like I had a little bit of a hand in it from a standpoint of being able to see it grow from all the different things that we've done when I was at the Dolphins to where it is right now.
You helped it grow more than you actually know. When you think about, I want you to think about this for a second. So when we did this in 2018, which was part of Next Chapter U Business Combine too, which evolved into that. But even before that, the birthing of it was really what? In New York City in 2018, where you played a big factor in not only being there and being present when we brought 30 guys from across the league up to New York City to go through an accelerator. But I want to rewind even further than that, right? So when you signed with Miami, I'll just remember like it was yesterday, because I had to put together the entire itinerary. I'm talking about helicopter rides, this, that, make sure they have a private dinner. Yeah, I had to set up everything for your family. It's where I got a chance, which is really cool, because I understood your roots from a very beginning when we went to Capitol Grill right down the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
No,
I took your family there. We had a private room, and I got a chance to understand a little bit more of who you were beyond what people had told me, because I got to know your family.
Yeah.
And so, when you talk about family to you, like what has it meant in your life, and what has it taught you, and what is the foundation that was laid for you through what your parents taught you growing up?
Yeah, I think the family is really the foundation of who I am. I've always looked at both of my parents from a standpoint of where they've come from to where they've gotten, and how they've built their success in their own particular right. And I think a lot of that sits on the basis of education. My mom being a teacher, my dad being an engineer, mechanical engineer, more specific, and just seeing how they're tireless workers. And now having kids of my own and having that work ethic is allowed me to be who I am. Yes, I've got great talents, God-given talents, all those different particular pieces, but just from the standpoint of being able to work and have that focus, that understanding, I garner all that from both my parents, but then even my older sister, who I got to watch succeed and grow and get her degrees, play professional soccer, play for my dad's country, all those different things. So yeah, I mean, my family is really my foundation at the end of the day.
No, that's amazing. And I know how much commitment you have and how much passion you have about family. But it's funny because Caleb was telling the story about how he met you, and I met you even before you were in the league. I mean, he was Sue, Dom's boy that was going to maybe hoop. But, if he starts playing, like, be careful, because if he gets angry, what's he going to do next? But it was funny. But let's talk a little bit about that, because, I know that your relationship with Dom Waters, who's your best friend, who was my point guard in college.
Yeah.
And just the city of Portland. Like, I think that something else that when I think about, Ndamukong Suh, you think about family, you think about really this commitment to being a business person, right? And like, I want to talk about that too, but also know how important your community is to you in the city of Portland. So, talk a little bit like what it was like coming up in Portland. And then, a little bit about how you used to think you could hoop a little bit.
No,
before you started being a
there was
football player.
no thinking. We can get back on the court right now. Like, that's the day. That's me 10 toes down, no matter what. But I mean, just talking about, like you said, family, fabric, my life, my foundation is a part of my community. I'm not who I am if I don't grow up in that particular area of Portland, Oregon, Northeast, being around Portland State where you went to school. And for me, I've always seen it. Portland has great people that come out of it, but a lot of those people always leave and stay gone. And I've always prided myself on being able to say, yeah, I may not be there all the time, but I'm always going to show love to Portland, and I'm going to actually come back and have my hands within that organization and in that city, in that community, no matter what. And so I like to spend my off seasons there. My parents still live there, and I like to be in the community and let those kids feel me and understand, like, I'm no different than you. I grew up, went to Grant High School, did all these different things that you did. My mom was a teacher, went to Irvington Elementary. So it's all those different things that they're saying, like, you can see me as an example, but really just somebody that you can exceed in the particular future. And I'm here to help you at that same time, because if there weren't other people in that community that paid it forward to me, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now.
I respect that a lot. And talk about community, and what are some of those things that you want to do for the community? I have some background of the things that you're involved in and the things that you want to continue building, but I think it's important for other people to see that side of you and to know that some of those initiatives and those things that you want to do to pour back.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that. For me, some of the big two initiatives that I have, primarily financial literacy. I think the one thing that people in this world, and especially disadvantaged communities that we live in and grow up in at times, are not financially literate. And we may think we are, but we really just are scratching the surface of where we can have our knowledge and be able to take advantage of those things. So that's always been a big passion of mine. I really wanted to kind of craft it on my own. And now over the last couple of years, I've been a little bit more public, primarily because of my wife and Katya and our foundation and whatnot. But I think it's a time to now really evolve in, instead of just teaching people, actually act on it and show them how they can act on it themselves. So they have the famous saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink. But at the end of the day, I want to teach them, but I want you to show you how to drink. I want you to show you how to execute these different particular pieces. And I think that's going to be the interesting thing over the years, once I decide to transition from the game of football to like everyday life and what that particularly looks like. And then I've always had a passion of real estate. Watching my dad, yes, he's a mechanical engineer, building in the construction industry, but both my parents had apartments when I was younger. I was cutting lawns as a little kid, like not really understanding like how I got to go be a part of all these sporting events and travel the country, travel the world to some extent at a young age, was because of that additional income that was coming in through them being ahead of their time and understanding real estate and how they can benefit from that and then pay for me to go do things that I want to do and be able to have fun. So real estate's a big passion for me, having a development company. As you mentioned with Dom, one of my best friends growing up, helping him build his construction company. I take great pride in that. And it's a form of vertical integration. He's eating, I'm eating, we're building stuff together, we're changing our community. And at the end of the day, truthfully, it's Black owned.
Yep, I like that.
Let me go back to something. You said something about, lack of financial education in this country. Where do you think the root comes from of the lack of financial education? And then what is the solution that you're going to be providing or you want to provide throughout the entire country?
Yeah, I think the root comes from, truthfully, our education system. We're failing our youth and our kids from an aspect of not teaching them at a young age, whether that's middle school, high school, elementary. I feel is a little young, but there's still some basics they could probably learn at that particular age. But more pointed to your question of understanding, like, what are the things that I want to do to change that is, one, it has to be changing legislation to get it into schools. But prior to that, I think the action item for me is having these partnerships that I have with different organizations, for example, Intuit, being able to create workshops, being able to be in these different schools and bring this information to them. And when you see the kids take a liking to it and their eyes light up, like that's excitement to me. That's progress, because now we're having conversations about it to where they can start asking questions and we can start to implement some of these basic tools for them to eventually, when they become adults, young adults, get into college, become young professionals, they have some sort of baseline. And I think there's so many different levels of it. I think it's very important that we continue to build upon that.
And I was thinking about it, Caleb and I, we talk about this all the time, right? When the hardest parts of stepping into leadership and running things or trying to make impact from a position of leadership is the problems that inevitably come up.
Yeah.
Talk to us about some of the obstacles or the challenge that you face in trying to implement financial literacy in neighborhoods or parts of town where that's not, maybe as common, or the challenges in being a Black business owner.
Yeah, I think the challenges are many in wide variety and ranges of what that particularly can look like. But I'm built from a perspective not of recognizing the challenges, but finding solutions and ways to move around them or through them. And I think the one thing about being able to be a part of such a powerful organization, the NFL, let alone great organization in my University of Nebraska, is being able to leverage those relationships and those tools that I have to be able to move past those different things, and finding the right people that are like-minded. I think when you have power in numbers, you can get through a lot of things. So being able to not only be the only person that wants to lead that initiative, finding other collectives that want to be a part of it and move it forward. So that's kind of my focus and my viewpoint on working through challenges.
So community is the way to get through challenges. Go ahead. I know you had something to say. But
no,
man,
I was just going to say, it's crazy to me, like, just listening to you when you talk about exposure breeds expansion. So I heard you talking about your family, and like, they provided so much exposure for you because they worked their ass off to provide you opportunities to go travel and experience and to be able to develop a work ethic, whether it's mowing yards or whatever. Like, those things are so important. And I'm sure they taught you some financial literacy, which probably became the foundation of, a lot of why you care about this initiative so much. But like, for you, what made you, because you're naturally, I would say, an introvert.
No doubt. There's no question about that. Yeah.
So like, how do you embrace that introvert, but also know that, man, like, to JT's point, you need community. That was a transition for you. How did you get out of your comfort zone? And was there a pivotal moment where you're like, man, I've really got to step out and do this more often because I'm starting to see the fruits of this?
Yeah. Not being selfish and being able to say that it's bigger than me. And honestly, people like you too, just from a standpoint of saying, like, they're out there, they're doing it. Why can't I do it? And I have a great platform. You guys got great platforms. Why not leverage those particular pieces to do more? And then you can put yourself in a good place. And I think a lot of introverts are introverts because they're uncomfortable with the people that they're around, and they don't like the people that they're around, so they keep to themselves. If I'm around you, we 10 toes down talking about whatever. So that's just how it works. And vice versa, meeting you from a standpoint of one of my best friends, it's easy to have that conversation. It's already open to us from that standpoint. So like, again, meeting like-minded people, having those particular focuses and whatnot, but then also not being afraid to challenge yourself and push yourself outside that box. I think that's where growth truthfully comes as a human. And that's where, for me, like, one of the things, like you asked me earlier on before we got on, was like, how was the workshop that you did with NFL boot camp? I did that because I wanted to put myself in an uncomfortable position to see how I reacted in that. And was I truthfully uncomfortable? I just didn't want to take that step forward. It was a new challenge. And I mean, I wouldn't say I aced it, but I feel like there's some great things that are coming up from that particular piece that I did. And that's where we just have to grow and get out of our own shells and get out of our own ways more times than not.
I got a psychological question I keep thinking about, and like leading up into this conversation, I wanted to ask you is how have you balanced who you are as a business professional and what you want to be as a business professional with the football player you like? How do you integrate that? How do you find balance in that? Because That's not something I had. Like I was just focused on football. I didn't have that, but throughout your career, I mean, that's what you've been known as. Like, how did you balance that?
I mean, to be honestly, it really was something that I needed. It wasn't a matter of balancing it. I needed these other ventures outside of sports to really push me and keep me in tune with what I wanted to do on the football field, because like God-given talent, all those different things, after probably I'd say year 3 or 4, it was like clockwork or what I needed to do to be prepared for each and every single season. From a training aspect, like I knew where I was going, how I was going to spend my off season, when I was drinking, when I wasn't drinking, like I had everything. I had that pattern and that routine all the way down. So that monotony started to come in and I'm like, wow, am I really going to start getting tired of this sport because I have this monotonous feeling of like I'm just beating my head against the wall? Well, then, all right, there's other passions that I have. And I said to myself one day, you know what? I really want to be more successful off the field than I was on the field. So I better start now. Because what I plan to do on the football field is it's going to take me years to exceed this in the business world, especially not really having the opportunity to start right out of college and be in the professional world. So internships, all these different particular pieces, shadowings, doing these different things. And that's why I took a huge liking to what you set up in New York for us back in 15, 16 or whatever it was. And so for me, it came down to being something that was my crutch that helped me in sports, because I would focus on football and then dive away, go sit in your office, go home and read newspaper articles, read operating agreements, all these different things to understand where I wanted to be in the business world and really start to figure out how I'm going to eventually transition out of sports. I didn't know it was going to be 13 years or 14 years because I'm still looking at playing again. But I mean, that's kind of how I leveraged, and it really wasn't a balance. It was more something, a crutch that helped me in the world of sports.
Well, that's crazy to think about, right? Because most people find like, oh, that would be splitting between two minds. But for you, you're saying it was positive and beneficial and healthy for my mind.
Yeah. And
you said something like, I'm always listening for the little things that people drop. You said the monotony, and you said beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Help us understand that. Help people that are fans of the NFL understand how it can feel monotonous, or what you were experiencing when you were hitting your head against the wall, that being this entrepreneur and professional outside of football helped you with.
Yeah. So the statement of saying beat my head against the wall and monotony comes from the mental grind of football every single day. And being in meetings, being in practice, bringing all those different particular pieces that we go through, and that's part of our job.
When you say the monotony, sorry to interrupt, but we're talking about the schedule, right?
The schedule,
like of what's on the board.
What's on the board
that I'm following, just so people understand.
And mine was different because I selfishly, in a lot of ways, chose to come early in the morning and work out. So that's usually 5:30, 6 in the morning. Then I get into all the team activities, 8 o'clock, and then we go till 3, 4 o'clock, whatever it is. So I had these long days. I had to break those days up. So lunchtime, taking a meeting on a Zoom or a call or whatever it may be, or reading something to get my mind away from football.
You're not shooting
He come to my office, shut that damn door. He'd be on that call.
Yeah, this is my office now.
It's mine. And that office was small as shit.
Yeah, it was.
So that's where you were going. So while the rest of us was talking shit and telling stories at the lunch table, you on the Zoom taking calls. No, that's incredible, man. I mean, the presence of mind to figure out that balance, right? Like a lot of people go towards other things to solve that monotony, that hitting your head against the wall feeling. But something I think a lot about as a former player, and I want to ask you, is how did you handle the lack of control that you personally had over what you were doing as a team or as a player? And do you think maybe some of that, what you were doing outside the game, helped your mind in that aspect?
1,000%. I couldn't have said it any better, man, because I'm wired. I love control of my time and my energy. And so when somebody else is telling me something else I have to go and do, especially when I know like you're not being efficient, you're not running things at a clip to where it could be like so much more faster. Like if we really went and looked at the schedule of the activities that we really do in a football day, we can cut that down to like 4 or 5 hours.
Easy.
We ain't got to be in there for 9 hours.
Easy.
Like, yeah, the longest period is training and practice. You put those two together, that's 3.5, 4 hours. The other is a 30-minute meeting and a 5-10-minute team meeting if you have that day. Like, and we be there all day. So if I don't have these enjoyments in between from calls, articles, or whatever it is, I'm going crazy. And especially the older I get when, like, okay, coach, we got this one tweak that was a 2-minute change. Like, let me go home. Like, I want to go home. Yeah. Like, I got other things I can do.
Yeah. So you're dominating efficiency of time, breaking it down to the granular details, right?
Yeah.
You played a long time, and right, you're still kind of up in the air what you're going to do. But I want to speak about, what have you seen? You've seen a lot of guys come through the league, like a ton. And they maybe don't have the schedule or the discipline. What do you think in terms of, we're talking about transitions, right, JT? What do you think on guys that transition successfully versus not, and they struggle? When you say struggle, you could be whatever you want to make it out to be. What's the difference between the two? Because you've met so many guys. Like, how do guys succeed when this game's over? How do they struggle?
I think the problem is in what we were just talking about. It comes from a standpoint they're no longer being told what to do and when to show up and how to act and how to move forward in their life. They got a blank sheet of time to do whatever they want to do. And they haven't figured out how to fulfill those particular pieces with, one, to be frank, cash flowing entities that's going to keep their pay or keep their same comfort of life, things that fulfill them in general in life. And then you got family dynamics. You put them pieces together and they're not in order. Oh, it's a disaster real fast. So
that's psychological well-being, right? In order for us to be well, so much of it comes down to our P's. And I know you're going to hit these, but what you talked about, family, profession, and truly knowing who you are is critical for us being able to respond to change, really. And that's essentially what a transition is. But I want to know, do you think you could predict with some good amount of reliability the people that are going to do well after the game and the people that are going to struggle from who you saw or how you saw them in the locker room?
Yeah.
I believe I could if they allow an open book. I think a lot of guys mask their lives after sports and their lives during sports, and you truthfully don't necessarily know who they particularly are and what their passions are and the things that they want to become and do. And so that's where I would beg to differ a little bit, because I don't know if I'm getting the true person. And I think a lot of guys act to say, I'm one of the guys and same dude in the locker room, versus don't be afraid to be different. Like, and I think that's a lot of the problems we have in our society. And the sports culture is like, everybody has to fit this particular mold. And if you don't fit this particular mold, you're kind of an outcast, or you're just not one of the guys. Like, I've always loved being different. Like, I take great pride in it.
I want to dive into like what you said, because I agree with you 1,000%. Being in the locker room for 13 years is like this mass. Like, what specifically do you see when you talk about mass, and why do you think it's hard for people to be vulnerable walking into an NFL facility or have to put on a facade for individuals? And do you think that plays a factor? Could you predict that if I'm wearing a mask right now, does that predict transitional struggles? Or what do you think about that?
It's an interesting question. I think a lot of people have the opportunity to take that mask off, but are afraid to. And if you truthfully look at it from a perspective of saying, all right, I'm in this sport, I'm in this locker room, I want to be accepted, because everybody wants to be accepted in some form or fashion, myself included. Like, it's part of life, human nature. And so you adjust and adapt to be accepted. But when you are transitioning out of that space and trying to find the next cohort and culture to be accepted by, you're like, you've got so many different options. Where do I go? Where football kind of just or sports in general kind of gives you like, this is the blueprint. Like you either are within it or you're not within it. And I think that's where people got to really start to look at themselves from that perspective.
Ooh. I mean, you might want to dive into that. That's more your realm.
No, I mean,
because I could say a million things.
Yeah, but I mean, he's so right. Like for human beings to feel as part of their culture, right? It provides so much psychological support. It provides so much meaning, right? When you walk into a culture and the culture accepts you, you automatically feel better about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, as athletes, they're not picking it. Like you're just getting jumped into these new cultures or these new locker rooms, and you like what the other guys like, wear what they wear, drive what they drive, and we all know it's well publicized.
Yeah.
The locker room and the effects it has on people. But how would a person find the strength to remain who they are? Like for you, you come in as a top draft pick, you immediately get the respect in the locker room. What about those guys that don't have those strengths around them? How could they go about remaining true to who they are while not being completely removed from fitting into that culture?
That's a great question. And conforming to the norms that are happening and trying to be somebody they're not, just to fit in. Like, how do they? I think that's what you're trying to say, right? Like, how do you find the strength or resolve to be able to pierce right through that?
I think that goes down to the character of that person at the end of the day, and what their foundation was, what they were prior to that, to when they got into the professional leagues and then being in the league and whatnot. And so it's a tough question and there's no perfect answer for it. Yeah. What I would say is for somebody like me, coming from two immigrant parents, like that was easy. They're completely different from everybody else that grew up in the community. Like I went to African meetings and dinners, like all types of things. So my culture on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, outside of when I was at school, looked a lot different than other kids. And like, oh, why can't you come to this party? I got to go do this with my dad. I got to go do this with my mom. My mom wants me to do certain things. I'm going to Jamaican. I'm going to Kwanzaa. Like there's different things that started in an early childhood for me that was different from all the other kids that I was going to school with. So again, not being afraid to be different and not being afraid to tell the truth of what I'm doing and what my mask really is. Yeah. I think that starts to evolve that. And I think when kids start to embrace it at an early age or get to a certain maturity to embrace those different things and being okay with being different, that's when you'll start to see some of those changes.
So what's your piece of advice if you're talking to a college football player? It has a strong possibility of going to NFL. What would you tell that individual?
That's a great question.
How to navigate going into a locker room?
I would give them the advice of be open to everybody. And I'll give you this example. So I had two guys that were ahead of me, that one was a first round draft pick and one was like a second round draft pick at Nebraska. And dude was Adam Carricker and Jay Moore, two guys that like junior, seniors, I was freshmen. So watch them in their work ethic of football wise. But our cultures are totally different. They're both from Nebraska, like both white guys, no offense, but like not the same. We're not in the same cultural way of growing up. So I took tidbits and pieces of who they were from certain aspects that I liked. And then I saw other guys like Daniel Bullock and some other folks that I saw what they were doing. And I wasn't afraid to take different pieces from other people to say, all right, I like what they're doing, and then I'm going to craft it and make it my own.
Yep.
So don't be afraid to learn from others, but at the same time, always be true to who you are. But it's great examples of other ways of success that you can now become parts of you.
Success leaves clues.
Absolutely.
Your receptivity behind that, I don't know when that started for you or how you got that, like the observant nature of being able to pick up cues from people and not being afraid to like implement them into your own life. Did that start with family, or did you learn that when the example you just gave?
Yeah.
Because I think it's powerful for your question was great. It's powerful for other people to listen to why that formula works so well, no matter who you are, whatever cultural space you may come from.
I think it was just an innate thing, to be honest, but also it's something that was learned from having other mentors and people around me that took a liking to me and kind of gave me those ropes to follow. And even though I had those ropes and those people helping me, I still didn't want to go 100% their way unless I 100% believe what they were doing. But I didn't 100% believe what somebody was doing, because if you can't tell me the why on every single inch of something that we're doing, like I just can't believe you. And I think that's where, when it comes to training, like I'm super close with my guy. We've been together for 14 years. When it comes to coaching, like there's certain people that I'm close with because they gave me the whys. And once you gave me the whys, I can then fully accept it and then move forward from that standpoint. But it's something that you grow into. I don't think it's something that you can have something that's put into you, but it's something that you also evolve with in life.
Right. But you have to be a little bit.
And you got to be open-minded.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, there has to, you said it, open-minded, not closed-minded, like I can do everything myself, right?
Yeah.
And having that type of egotistical mentality where you're just shutting off the world and I know more than everything because of my athletic ability. And I think a lot of guys fall into that trap. And I think it's hard in social media nowadays when they're starting a following very young, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm only posting about myself and everything's been about me, it's like, and if everybody's listening to my voice, what's the point of listening to somebody else?
But you talk about social media. That's a problem with social media from my viewpoint. It's only snapshots of the best of somebody's life.
Yeah.
Like we rarely see, all right, how many, my wife, for example, she'll probably hate me for saying this. She took 1,000 photos to then pick the perfect one to then post that.
By the way, that's not just your word.
Don't worry. Be very clear.
Yeah. That's my wife. That's his girl. Like,
Everybody.
It's
And
everybody.
And then you got
Experience that.
all these editing apps and all these different things that you can maneuver and shift and all. It's like, one, I ain't got the patience to do all that. That's why I'm very little on Instagram. Like I like the stories.
You
like,
send her the photos and she chops up the reel.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, I think that's our problem right there. We're all seeing only perfection, where there's an evolution to have gotten to that perfection. So understand that process.
And I would also say that what we also don't focus on is this sustainable, right? And I think one of the biggest things I experienced as a player in multiple sports, some of the ways people are that are making them highly successful in that setting is not sustainable afterwards.
Yeah.
And how you're living today, the pictures you're taking today may not be where that person is in 10, 15 years. And that's what was so different about what you've done, right? Is you decided to root into sustainable habits and skills that were going to get you to where you wanted to go in the long run.
Yeah.
Talk to us about like just the difference between short-term and long-term thinking and how effective that's been for you.
And I'll say this. You talk about the fancy cars and all those different things. I did it. I went to the clubs, dropped 50 grand, 100 grand, and was in Vegas, Miami, all those different things.
It was a business write-off too.
Yeah, I for sure should have been writing them off because I had teammates riding with me and all that. So like you're going to have those experiences. Enjoy them, but don't make that as your lifestyle. Like when I first got into the league, like I'm sure everybody saw the piece the other day where my man got a divorce and he put all his money in his mom's name. Like I kind of had that same being. I'm a control freak to some extent, so I have my own bank accounts. But mom and dad, can I buy this car? No. What you mean no? That's my money. Why do you need it? Or do you just want it? So having those things, those checks and balances, helped me as a young man start to understand those. Yeah, there was times where like I wanted nice cars when I was here in Miami, Rolls Royce, Ferrari, all those different things. A lot of those things I leased. I don't need to buy that. I can enjoy it for 2-3 years, give it right back to the dealership.
Yep.
And spread a half the money in enjoying that car. Like I do it now. Like I lease cars because I don't want to drop some money on a vehicle where it doesn't make any sense. Where I want to trade it and get the next best thing in 2 years. Like, and I got kids. They gonna tear this thing up. So I have no foreign cars now. I got straight American cars.
To his point, we're riding back from Lakeland, Florida. These kids are eating, we have to drive through and they got food all over the place. She goes, you see why I'm not getting your car, the new vehicle? Is because it'll end up an absolute mess and disaster. But like, to your point, I want to jump into kind of some vulnerability, right? Because most people see you is this, you're not scared of anything.
Yep.
Right? Like you've attacked on and off the field. Most people fear you, and your vulnerability, I've seen firsthand, right? But like, is there a specific instance in your life where people don't know that you have failed? Like you did not succeed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like what that specific moment, we talk about transition, what did that teach you? Is there a pivotal moment where you failed, where most people, watch, we talk about filtered life and social media, all the good things, but what bad has happened in your life where you're like, man, like this fucking sucked and it was hard to get through?
Yeah, man, I've had plenty of bad times in life and bad investments. I mean, I think you think of and look at like LeBron's company from a standpoint of his media company in Spring Hill and all those different things. Like I feel like I was a part of a group that was before that came to fruition, and everybody having their own media companies and whatnot. I got into one and it just wasn't the right timing. It wasn't the right people. Like was working with BET executives, all these different things, and it just failed. Mm-hmm. And it was a big hit. And I was like, I look back and I was like, why did this happen? What are the lessons that I'm learning from this? How can I apply this to the next thing that I want to get into, the next venture that I want to get into? And it taught me a lot, to where you can't always trust people's opinions and focuses on certain things, especially from being in an arm's length position. You got to really be hands-on if you want to see a lot of success. Remind people. That's why for me, I've always been a person like, if I'm going to do something, I want to physically be a part of it. I want to be on the day-to-day until it gets to a point to where then I can start to oversee certain things. And so there's no question I've had lots of up and downs, whether it's investments or just things in general that happen on a day-to-day life standpoint. But it's you gotta not be afraid to also put yourself out there and learn those lessons.
And like it's always hard to go through something where you invest in it, you think you made the right plan and it doesn't work. But talk about how you responded to that. Like what was your next step? Like how long did it take you to learn and process what happened?
Yeah.
And then to make your next move?
Yeah, I'm a big person on, if something failed, whether it failed or it was successful, I got to know why and how that all transpired. Was it something I did? Was it something else somebody else did? And it's not always from a standpoint of trying to find blame. It's more so finding the root cause of the issue so I don't repeat that same thing. And or looking at it from a perspective saying, all right, how could I have done that a little bit better? Because yeah, we saw some success, but could we have better success? And could I have handled it a little bit different? And one thing that I picked up from you was EQ. A lot of that stuff comes in emotional intelligence and being able to have that into the particular business dealings and understand people's strengths and weaknesses of what they're good at and what they're bad at. And I know where my strengths and weaknesses are, and being able to continue to refine those different pieces to put the right people together. Because I mean, you want to go fast, go alone. Yeah. You want to go far, go with people. I mean, it's a common saying.
But keep in mind, right, we talk about like failures. Correct me if I'm wrong, your team hasn't been the same, to your point, from the moment you entered the league to where you are now, right? Like you got to be
able to cut losses and really be able to make sure people are accountable. I do it on a yearly basis, and I really started probably 2013 and 14 as I got into the like really trying to advance where I wanted to be, especially outside of sports, of doing a self-audit of people that are in my life that I'm working with, I'm doing different things with. Family ain't going nowhere, but shit, my sister, she wanted to transition to move out to her own aspiration time. We worked together my first 5 years of my entire career. We don't work together anymore. She was successful at masterclass and doing her thing and whatnot. And that was a decision that we made once I left Detroit, was that she wanted to go do X, Y, and Z, and I was coming down here. And so being able to have those tough conversations and those, like, again, those self-audits on an annual or biannual basis, I think is very important.
Well, while we
it's crazy to me. Like, not a lot of people do that. I don't think we can't just bypass that. Like,
Yeah,
This is
100%.
wild to me. And I'm going to come back to that after your question because I got another one.
Well, I just figured like while we have you on the topics of emotion, right? Like I want to pull some more of that out. I always look at it in basic emotions and the science of it, right? The negative ones, sadness, anger, fear, right? Yeah. Those are ones we all feel. How do you personally handle those type of emotions? Like, I know what you've done to create the efficiency, but how do you personally go through those type of experiences?
It's not easy. I mean, I think how I've gone through those emotions is evolved over the years. And it's evolved over the years just from a simple standpoint of talking about the people in your life, all the different things, leaning on Caleb, leaning on my wife, leaning on my best friends, leaning on other business people that have become now close friends to me, and being able to have some of those tough conversations and really like kind of look yourself in the mirror and have that self audit, like just you one-on-one, and like really think and see some of those different particular pieces and then go from there. It's not easy by any means. It's like there's times where like, man, like why did I do this, or why am I in this particular situation? But also having that faith of knowing that I'm gonna get through this. Is just a particular patch of time in my life, and it's something I have to go through to get to where. And like, again, a common saying: if God believes that you can do it, He's gonna put it on your plate.
That's cool.
That's awesome, man. So mental health is a big piece of like how you deal with things. And I'm sure people think of mental health and they throw it under this umbrella, like I have to go see somebody. A lot of time I can figure out how do you process your emotions, or how do you emotionally think through a situation. So I don't think it has to, JT, correct me if I'm wrong, but fit under this is what it is. It's really just taking care of your thoughts, right? And your problems, how do you respond to them, and how do you process effectively?
And I would just add in and say, mental health isn't a bad thing. It doesn't always have to be seen as a bad thing. I think mental health has so many different layers to it.
Yep.
It can be good, bad, and different, and just a process at the same time. Like that's where I like that there's awareness on it, but I also feel like it always comes from a negative connotation.
Yeah, because we always look at mental health in a way of going, oh, something's off about this mental health.
Yeah. Correct.
But correct. I always tell people health is the foundation of performance. You don't want to go into a football season unhealthy.
Yeah.
So you can bust your ass in the offseason and do everything you can, because you know the moment that you start to get unhealthy, you start to not be at your best, right? And that prevention, that mindset. So what are those mental health things that you do for yourself? Like, what are Sue's mental health techniques? Like, and it could be anything, right? There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. But what's your mix?
Can we not bypass the point though before he answers that of like he always wants to know why, which provides clarity. That's a piece of like addressing your mental health. Because if he's walking around wondering, like, and just making up thoughts in his head that aren't reality, he always wants to get to the root. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right.
At least what I heard from you is like, once I get clarity, I'm good, but I need to know where the root came from.
Yeah, I mean, give me a specific reason why you're finding me, why you're treating me the certain way. Like, yo, bro, give me a reason, like, and let it be legit. And then we can go from there.
I'm sure the league office loved those conversations after
No,
that.
they did. Not at all. But to your question, Julius, is like, what are some of the mental health? We talked about this the other day. I gotta work out.
Yep.
Like, if I don't work out, my wife knows my day is gonna be like, she ain't getting nothing out of me. Until I get this workout in, of whether it's a simple walk around the block. Like the other day on Sunday, I was like, all right, get up in the morning, we're gonna sleep in, do the kids thing, eat, play for a little bit. As soon as I go down for nap, I'm touching this block. At least a mile. Simple walk. Mind's clear, got to get my thoughts, gets a couple emails done, whatever it may be, take a shower. I'm ready to go to the zoo later on that day. Like, I'm got all types of energy for you. But if I don't get that workout in, or know when I'm getting that workout in, I'm usually not in a good space mentally. Then it comes to having some, like, you have those days where it's just kind of go with the flow. 9 times out of 10, I need some sort of schedule, because if I have that schedule, if something gets thrown in there that I got to adjust to, all right, we'll fit it in right here. We'll fit it in over here. Like, that's how I function. And I just know that from, I think it's Enneagram,
Yeah.
Like is the test that I took, I'm type 5. So just being able to see those different things, how they wrote out, like you're process oriented, you have all these different things, you need just structure. And it's okay to have some things that are, but also understand, like, you talk about being the introvert. Like if I'm around people too much, I get drained.
Yep.
Like, you got to leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like I need my 5 minutes alone. So just
Christina
understanding
over
those
there,
different
Phil,
things
you gotta
about
give a shout out to
yourself
Christina.
helps you be successful in life. And it's just something, a basic test like that you can eventually research a little bit more and see those correlations of who you are as a person. Like
That's that self-diagnostic, man.
And that's one of his strengths, right? It's like this whole interview, I'm just listening, right? And I'm collecting them and thinking about, okay, what are these things Suh is doing that's allowing him to operate as a business professional and an elite level athlete and now as a father, right? And it's coming down to, you like to process things. Processing things is so important to who you are. Being connected to your values and your family and tight friends, like that relationship, that's another one of your strengths. And that's how you go through things. Giving yourself time to reflect is another thing that you're doing really well, right? And so like, that's your mix, right? And that's what you've been doing to be able to function at this really high level over and over. And like Caleb said, it's unique, right? Like the presence of mind you had from a combination of the parents and the mentors and the people that have poured into you it's unique, it's different, and it's really cool to hear how you've always been able to, I mean, for a metaphor, like you've been on your bicycle, like where I feel like I know enough pros where they're not always on top of the bike. Like sometimes the bike's laying on its side.
Yeah, or it's had the training wheels on for way too fucking long.
Yeah,
like,
but you've been able to stay in the seat.
Like I think to your point though, like Julius, like I think the athlete has evolved, right? I think it's evolving. I think it's continuing to evolve. I think a lot of so when I joined the league in 2010, got hired with the Dolphins, it was I want to do 3 things with my life, right? Post football, I want to coach, I want to broadcast, and I want to help the community. Those were always the 3 answers. There's no doubt about it. When you talk about the athlete nowadays, and I think LeBron James, we don't give enough credit, has a lot to do with the shift along with social media and awareness and exposure, even your articles about you, period. Like Warren Buffett's your mentor, like these things were starting to catch fire and now it's transitioned completely. So you're dealing with a different type of athlete. Now, we just got to meet in the office. It was kind of precursor to that, right?
Yeah.
Which is, what does the athlete need nowadays? How have things changed for the athlete in terms of what they care about, but also what infrastructure they need in place to be successful now and in the future?
I mean, I think there's a lot of infrastructure that's thrown to the wayside and taken, I wouldn't even say for granted, because a lot of people, when you get into the real world, there's protocols and expectations of certain ways things should be set up. No different than any other business. Why should that not be the same for us as athletes? Why does everything have to look completely different, disarray, and all these different things? Why not have that business structure set up for them and for everybody in that particular space to then particularly grow and then really, all right, I've gotten my piece, like I set up for school. I went through my 4 years of college, went from that standpoint and moved forward, like having that same structure as you move into life. And I think that's where we as athletes have not found a way to truthfully put that process together. And that's something I aspire. Go ahead.
So how would they do it, right? Like you figured out how to do this going into your career, but I can personally say I didn't have a presence of mind about business, about the world outside
That you
of
were a business?
Yeah, that I was a business, right? Like I'm from Stockton, California. Like everybody was just happy as hell that you were in the league. How do you go from being a kid that grows up in a community like that to now getting to this opportunity? You're going into the league. Where do they go to set up this structure? How does that happen for them? Who can you trust?
I think that's where people like myself and people like Caleb, people like yourself, we come together as a community and figure out what that looks like. And that is outside of the financial literacy aspect of things that one task I want to accomplish and accomplish very quickly from a standpoint of at least get a couple people under my belt. I think I've done it to some extent, especially like on the real estate side of things, being to help guys get invested into some things that they really want to be a part of, but never to the magnitude of really sitting down and having that quasi family office for athletes and how that works for them. Like, I don't care about the sport. Like, you have fun there. Like, do your agent thing, do all that stuff. The business of being an athlete, let's talk about that and what those structures need to be, how you can not let Uncle Sam take all your money because you're a W-2 income person. Like, let's figure out all those different particular pieces. Let's set up the structure of your wills, your trust, all those different things that is going to, over time, need to be changed. My will and trust that I did right when I got out of college looks totally different to where it is right now with me having a wife and kids and a big extended family. Like, I went from having one sister to 4 sisters.
So where do you start, right? I know you want to create this. And like you said, like, it's so important to come together, right? To be able to provide these. Where do you start? Like, I know you said you want to work with a couple of people. Give me a little bit more context, because I think that's so important. I think it needs
not
to
only
happen.
where you start, but like, what if a player's already like, hey, I have my financial advisor. He takes care of everything already for me, right? That, my FA does that. Like, how is the model different from your perspective, and where do you start?
Yeah, I think the model is different in a lot of different ways. Just from the standpoint of financial advisor, most of the time is just taking care of the money aspects and trying to build your wealth for you, for lack of better words. But there are other ways to do that outside of the markets, in the traditional ways of doing different things, whether you have a passion in gaming, in real estate, in tech, whatever it may be. Like, there's multiple ways to skin that particular cat. And a way to avoid taxes and a way to truthfully, like, structure yourself to where you're very efficient. And everything that you do in your life is a business, especially as a personality. Talk about name, image, and likeness. Like, that's happening as soon as you get into college.
Right.
You are a business.
Sometimes high school.
Yeah, sometimes high school. Yeah, you are a business. You need to set that up. You want to help mom? Well, mom, budget, help me be the my bookkeeper and bookkeep all these things for me, pay you 50 grand. Like, instead of just giving mom 50 grand where you now have to do a gift tax return because you gave her 50 grand because it's over the threshold of the 13 grand or 16 grand, whatever it is in this particular year. So those are the things that people got to start to understand, where you'll be more efficient to be able to do the things that you want to, and you actually get benefits from it at the same time.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about benefits from that, but it sounds like to me you want to provide not only this infrastructure, but education behind it, because you're talking about educating the entire family, right? This isn't just about like one person. This is about educating an entire ecosystem to almost put them in position to be like you and how you grew up. And hold on, time out. So he's putting the framework together and saying, hey, wait a second. If my family figured this out and I put layers to it and I've had mentorship and I know how to do this for each athlete, I'm going to start doing this for each guy. But here's the internal piece that you're talking about. But there's also the external piece of relationships and access to mentorship that changed your life. So you're trying to almost create this superpower within it itself, right?
There's no question, because one, you create that structure and be able to help them through all these different particular pieces. I believe the world is a half a degree of separation, if not a quarter degree of separation from anybody. So you want to get into XYZ, you want to go meet, you want to be in Disney, you want to see what Disney's done and how there's, let's go try and get you a mentorship by Bob Iger and go from there. Like, just finding those different things to be able to find those relationships to help you grow as a human. Like, I think that's very, very important versus just saying, all right, I'm going to get my W-2 income and move on.
And hope I saved enough.
Hope I saved
enough. And hope I find a passion that just shows up in my lap when the game's over.
Yeah, exactly.
Without meeting anybody.
Yeah.
No, I mean, they say like one of the best things you can do is to take what you do best and teach it to others. And it sounds like that's essentially what you're trying to create in a way. This mindset and this approach to be highly professional on and off the field was what you excelled at, was what created this balance, and it's propelling you into your future. And now you want to provide that for other young athletes in that mentorship. And I think that's amazing. I think that that's absolutely something that you should do, And I just want to commend you for that, and then just encourage you, because you and I talked about it the other day. I'm trying to do it now at 34, almost 35. But when I was 22, I could have already been getting that rolling. Yeah. And these, not necessarily mistakes, but these things that I'm learning from at this point happen now. So I think that that's great that you're doing that. And I definitely want to just continue to support you and encourage you in that journey.
No, I appreciate that. And I think it's going back a little bit to the financial literacy aspect of things. You want to teach people, but you don't want to just leave them with the lessons taught. Teach them how to implement those lessons. That's powerful. And then they can say, all right, I learned, I was actionable. Now I can become a leader in this space. And we start to build that community even bigger and bigger and bigger, because I want you to be part of my group and my organization, but you best, if I'm doing my job right, you're graduating and the next person comes. And then hopefully you come back and teach that next person.
He's talking about discipleship.
That sounds like somebody else I know.
It's discipleship. I mean, that's the root of what we're here for, right? Is that this podcast in general, you talk about next chapter, people go through transitions. They're trying to figure it out. You know, I think one thing we got to learn is you got to go on the offense. And I think, Sue, you've gone on the offense your entire life, but you haven't remained selfish about it, right? You're being selfish in order to be selfless. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I want to commend you as well for just going on the offense, teaching people the game. Your name comes up in presentations more than you actually realize. You left the combine. If you remember, Kurt Richardson shows a picture of Ndamukong Suh's badge at Quicken Loans because as a rookie, you were sitting in there in meetings, maybe not saying anything as an introvert, but you're taking everything in. And that's why I wanted, like, getting out of your fucking comfort zone. If you don't learn one thing, if it's the only thing you learn from this, it should be to get out of your comfort zone. It's the only area for growth. And you had mentioned that earlier. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, being on. JT, any closing thoughts?
No, I echo what Caleb said. Thank you for your time. Most importantly, like, this is so important, impactful to get this other side of you out. Like, you know, Sue, the process-oriented, detailed entrepreneur that wants to give back, help, and serve not just your local community, but also those that are following the steps behind you. I'm going to be a supporter of you in any way I can. You know, I'm just a call away, and keep bringing people together from that 1 degree of separation. And this is what the Next Chapter podcast is built on, like telling people's authentic stories is who they are. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
Nah, man, I appreciate y'all. Let's go get on this hoop court.
Right now. I'm going to tell you one thing. If we got a hoop court,
surgery, I got to get
this fucking elbow.
My man said he got knee surgery now.
Yeah, he got knee surgery, but I'm good. I might need a surgery after we're done, but I'm going to stick this elbow right through that back, like, because I know you're going to try to post up.
I'm going to pull you out.
No, you.
Sue's trying to play half court, first off.
No
He's
doubt.
not playing full court, so what you mean?
I'm not even in shape right now for that. It's April.
I knew he was going to try to play.
This man really said, you want to meet me and play some pig?
You went from
that's what you
knee
really
surgery. At least I'm trying to play half court.
Man,
We can get the
D-lineman
full
always
court
trying to
in
play
May.
half court. No, when my knee gets fixed, I want to play full court. I'm not about to just
No
run
doubt.
10
He's about
feet.
to wear his ass out.
What?
He said, go ahead and keep that weight up if you want to.
Yeah, you want to be 300 pounds?
We will
motor
open
high.
no. We will open that gym up and get it right.